they used to come after women of color and accuse women of color of doing this very thing.
Wow.
And that's why they continue to cut all these programs and erase all these things.
The women of The View have a complete meltdown over the fact that someone would promote human reproduction. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen them this upset since the Supreme Court's overturned Roe v. Wade. Just watch.
I don't even know how to explain this story, but I'm going to tell you what happened. The Conservative Political Action Conference, known as CPAC, wrapped up this weekend, and conservative activist Isabel Brown had a message for her fellow Gen Z women, who reportedly are the least likely group in America to get married and have kids. But I want you to see this clip.
If you're not encouraging your children to grow up and have the courage to get married and have kids, more kids than they can afford before they think they're ready, it is high time to start. It is these choices, like deleting our dating apps and quitting birth control pills and saying I do at the altar, that ultimately trickle down into the political policies that we will see save our country.
Okay. I just want to say, years ago, they used to come after women of color and accuse women of color of doing this very thing.
Wow.
And that's why they continue to cut all these programs and erase all these things.
Child care programs?
Child care name it, name it. And now, had I known that it turns out we are all just one group of women. We're just one group. I mean, because what is she,
So apparently, women can't speak for other women anymore unless it's approved by the harpies of The View. Because the minute a woman steps outside of that box and promotes something like marriage, family, or traditional values, it's a problem. But if a woman promotes, what do they like to call it? Oh yeah, reproductive rights, it's okay. And you know what? I can only remember a few times where I've seen Whoopi this upset. One was when they were talking about banning the abortion pill, and another time was when states started moving to stop gender-affirming medical treatments for minors.
Everybody wants to tell me what to do, but you won't let me make my decision about my body. You are not the person to make that decision. My doctor and myself and my child, that's who makes the decision. And you're telling me that as a parent, I'm not smart enough to decide if my child and I need to have gender affirming. Our doctors are not involved. What is going? So I can't decide what my kid reads. I can't decide for my child what my child says is going on. You're telling me your beliefs, and they keep saying it, and I keep saying, what Bible are you reading? Because God was really clear.
Very clear.
Everyone's talking like they know so much about a woman's body, but when you try to ask them questions, they can't seem to answer anything because most of them don't know jack doogie about a woman's body.
Why are we seeing the same level of outrage over someone simply encouraging young people to think about marriage and having families? Why do conversations about traditional family values trigger these women so much? Or is the outrage coming from the fact that it's a white woman encouraging other women, many of them white, to get married and have more children? Why else would Whoopi react like, okay, Becky, like, totally? Because let's be honest, The View has a reputation for constantly criticizing white conservatives. And it almost feels like the idea itself isn't what's bothering them, but who's delivering the message and what values she represents. And you would think Anna, of all people on that panel, would agree with not waiting to have children, considering she took that road and missed her opportunity. But no, this is what she says instead.
Call to responsibility for the men who help make these children, right? I don't know why it's always people lecturing women what they have to do or not to do. Bottom line, if you're not paying my bills, you don't get to tell me what I do with my uterus.
And I'll let you make your own assumptions to what she's suggesting in her pro-choice rant.
Because I think it is hypocritical and wrong to ban a family from making their own choice of what's best for them. Doesn't mean that you don't love your special needs family members, that you don't adore them and they are part of the family, but that we know firsthand experience just how difficult it is to beg and plead for years sometimes to be able to get some help. So if they're going to ban a family's choice, there's going to be more poor kids.
Yeah.
There's going to be more kids in adoption. There's going to be more kids in foster care. There's going to be more abused kids.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of other things, and those hypocritical states need to step up and provide the services.
Well, in this,
Yeah, pretty disgusting. Now let's hear what the all-knowing mother of two and sister-in-law of a gynecologist has to say.
I think it's just really
Reckless.
reckless to be suggesting that people should have children when you now know in this country there's this affordability crisis, and for a two-person household, a married household, you need over $400,000 for childcare. Over $400,000. Most people don't make over $400,000. So she's advocating for people to be born into poverty, people not being able to feed those children, people not being able to educate those children, and people not being able to house those children at the same time when this government is cutting all of the services that would allow people to have families and big families.
And let's not forget.
And so he is putting his beliefs before the law. And that's one of the first things you learn in law school. You don't do that. So I'm very concerned about the activism that we're seeing from courts. I'm especially concerned about the activism we're seeing from the Supreme Court, the judicial activism. But when you look at this particular ruling, and I'll say this very quickly, it's also an assault on science because it's an assault, it's an attack on the FDA's approval process.
Yes.
And so that is a slippery slope. This drug, whether or not you agree with abortion or not, has been proven to be safe for the past 20 years.
it's also used for other things, like blood pressure.
And in fact,
fibroids.
yeah, used
also,
for fibroids. And in fact, taking Viagra is 10 times less safe than taking that drug. So it just seems to me
Maybe
that
if they stopped the first one, they wouldn't have
Right,
to do
exactly.
the second one.
So according to Sunny, only rich people should be having children. Just think about how insane that sounds for a second. Since when did starting a family become something reserved only for the wealthy? The majority of America isn't rich. People struggle and work hard and raise families anyway. And it's usually because of that their children grow up, work harder, and build a better life for themselves, so their children can have even more opportunities. That's actually how progress works in this country. Families sacrifice, build, and improve over generations. But when you listen to these hags, it's almost like they worship money over everything else. And Sunny claims that having a baby is reckless because of cost and economic pressure, yet she supports policies that allow people who are entering our country illegally to come here and start families. So if the concern is really about affordability and whether people can properly raise children, then shouldn't that standard apply across the board? Or, once again, I'll ask, is it the message or the messenger?
My ultimate beef with this is that it wraps a woman's worth up in her ovaries in a way that for too long has happened. The whole women's movement was not about bucking the trend of staying at home or loving tradition. It was giving women a choice to do what they wanted. And that's what this is too. Marriage, children, it's a choice. And by the way,
But be responsible for God's
No, but be
sakes.
responsible. But the other thing is they act like people are sitting around just saying, yeah, no, I'm good. Most women I know, and some don't, but most women wanted to have children. They don't have them for other reasons. Yeah. Most women I know, if they had a great candidate or a partner, might want to be married. Maybe they don't. The fact that we keep putting this on women, that their only worth in society, politics, policies, is if they produce a baby or have a husband, is the stupidest, most old-fashioned thing. We have come too far. The world has over 8 billion people. Yeah. We no longer need to force people to procreate and pump out babies. We have arrived here. Women now and girls now have a choice.
But also,
Let them do that.
These harpies clearly don't understand what population collapse means. Countries around the world are already dealing with declining birth rates, aging populations, and shrinking workforces. And when fewer people are born, eventually there aren't enough workers to support the economy, fund social programs, or even care for the elderly.
And America is not having enough babies to keep our populations up.
It's not a crazy theory, and it's already happening in places like Japan, South Korea, and even parts of Europe. So when people talk about encouraging families and having children, they're not talking about forcing anyone to do anything. They're recognizing a real demographic challenge that affects the future stability of our country. And it drives me absolutely crazy how these women just take everything to the extreme. Nobody is talking about forcing women to have children. That's not the argument. If you don't want kids, fine, that's your life. Do what you want, but let's stop pretending that encouraging family and parenthood is somehow dangerous or reckless, because that's just absurd. It's not like society magically runs itself. Somebody has to raise the next generation. The doctors, the nurses, the teachers, the plumbers, the electricians, the firemen. I could go on and on. So they can't sit there and cry about responsibility of children, but fully expect the benefits of a society built by other people's families. They say you don't need a husband, that you don't need kids, that you can hire people to do things for you. But somebody had to raise the person you're hiring. Somebody had to sacrifice, struggle, and invest their time and energy raising that future worker, professional, or caregiver. So they just need to stop with the nonsense. No one is saying everyone must have children, but acting like families are some outdated idea and mocking people who value them is completely insane. Are we gonna forget the fact that families are literally the reason society continues to function in the first place? But in all honesty, I really wouldn't expect anything different from them at this point, because every time traditional values come up, they treat them like the problem instead of recognizing the role they've played in building this country in the first place. The truth is, most of the women on that panel have children, except Anna, who admitted that she waited too long and IVF failed for her. So let's not pretend like she didn't try. But the rest of them, they built families, and I'm sure they benefited from that experience. So for me, it's peak hypocrisy. How on one hand, these women constantly talk about reproductive health and frame abortion as empowering. Then you turn around and they're lecturing America, saying that it's reckless to have kids, that it's irresponsible and unaffordable. But you never hear these same voices telling immigrant families that they shouldn't bring their children into the world because it might be too expensive, or don't bring their families to America because we can't afford it. So I really don't think this is about affordability or responsibility. The real question is, why do the standards change depending on who's having the children? Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.